All right. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, maybe if you're coming from the UK. I think it's evening time over there. Great to have you all here with us. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Jake Sullivan. I use he, him pronouns. I work with Mentor National as a senior manager of field learning. As we're giving folks a minute or two to settle on in, please drop your name and where you're calling in from in the chat. We want to know who's with us today. Again, if you're just joining, thanks for being here. Welcome to this month's collaborative mentoring webinar series, actually the first of the year, Power of the Ps, Rethinking Recruitment and Building Powerful Mentorship Communities. Very excited to have everybody. Oh, perfect. Here we go. All right, we got Marty from Pennsylvania, Kate from Fort Worth. Actually, Fort Worth is where Marissa and I met, and Elisa for the first time a couple years ago. We were just talking about that yesterday. Perfect. Oh my gosh, so many people coming in. Texas, Illinois, more Pennsylvania, California. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Happy Wednesday. Carolinas, New York. Awesome. Airsteed, thanks for being here. Good to see you. And Brittany, future facilitators. We'll get into that at the end of the webinar, a little sneak peek into next month's webinar. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. We have a jam-packed session today, so we'll probably keep it pushing. You're already all doing it. Just a reminder to click those three dots to make sure that your message goes to everybody. Keep introducing yourselves, keep using that chat, and we'll move on to the next slide for some tips for engagement throughout today's webinar. Awesome. So you're already using the chat. Continue to introduce yourself, talk with one another, share any resources that are relevant to today's conversation. Make sure to respond to our presenters today. In the Q&A box, which you'll also see on your toolbar, put any questions that you have there. We'll be pausing throughout today's webinar to answer those questions as they're relevant, and we also will have some time at the end to dedicate to question and answer. And then you also have the opportunity to upvote any questions you'd like to see answered. Just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and this webinar, as well as the slides, will be posted to our website, as well as be sent out via email in about a week. So you'll have all of the information that you need to continue this conversation forward. And then last but not least, if you need them, live captions are available again by clicking on that CC button on your toolbar. But as you are going through today's webinar, again, just a reminder, make sure you're responding to everybody by clicking those three dots and continue to introduce yourself. We can move on to the next slide to talk a little bit about the fact that this is a three-part series. So as you signed up, you might have noticed that we have 3 dates as a part of this series on that registration page. Since you're all registered for today, you don't need to re-register anything to get access to these other webinars. So today, April 30th, we'll be covering, like I said, the power of the Ps, a really amazing framework to help you kind of think about community engagement. On May 22nd, or excuse me, May 21st, the Governor's Prevention Partnership will be covering relationship development and deepening. And then we'll wrap up the series on June 30th with a collaboration between Mentor Nebraska and the Governor's Prevention Partnership, where they'll discuss different modes of partnership, give you some other ideas for how you can navigate this and approach this work, and then also how to ensure sustainability over time. So again, you don't need to re-register anything. You should have them all, but that's a little bit of a high-level overview of what you can expect. Move on to the next slide to introduce our facilitator for today. So very, very excited to introduce Marissa Hattab, who will be facilitating today's webinar. Thank you so much to the Mentor Nebraska team for connecting us. Marissa currently serves as the Chief Culture Officer at Heartland Family Service, where she leads initiatives and strengthens organizational excellence and embeds core values across 19 locations and over 400 staff. She's the creator of the Mentor 360 Way, a program designed to equip mentors and mentees with practical tools for success, and she played a key role in developing a peer-to-peer mentoring program for survivors of domestic violence. With deep experience in culture strategy and leadership development, Marissa brings a values-driven approach to building inclusive and effective mentoring networks. So everybody, please welcome Marissa. We're so happy to have you here today. Send some love in the chat, send the emojis, send the reactions, and I'll pass it over to you to Marissa.
Yay! Okay, Jake, can you hear me? I know I just sang. Did you get to hear it?
Yes,
Okay,
we did. We
everyone,
did.
sometimes. Okay, great. I like to sing, And I love interaction, but as we know, the way that this webinar is set up, I can't actually see your faces. So I am going to be what I call extra. I am going to have a little razzle dazzle in my presentation because that's just my personality. And I am genuinely so happy and so excited to be able to present to you all the power of the P's and really helping us to, what I would say, really be grounded in not just the practical tools and steps that we can implement in building partnerships, but ensuring that our heart posture is in the right way and in the right place, in the ways in which we do it, what our motives are, and how we actually engage and form community with our partners. So let's go ahead and move forward. And hopefully, technology will be my friend. And I think it will be. We'll see. So here's at what you can expect from today. Of course, we have our welcoming, what you can expect when it comes to the objectives, like what you'll walk away with. There is a particular framework that I will be implementing throughout my facilitation approach. So we are going to discuss with our five keys framework. We're going to discuss some of the things in which we may not be aware of, some of our blind spots. We're going to talk about, okay, what does it mean to shift from our blind spots into being aware? And then finally, what are some practical practices and things we can implement in the ways in which we're wanting to cultivate and build partnerships from the right heart posture? So that's what you can expect as far as my facilitation approach, and expect to walk away with very practical things that you can implement first within and in your strategy as far as how you're wanting to engage with partnerships moving forward. We're going to talk about trauma informed care. That's super important, of course, with our work. I know those of you engaging right now are like, yep, ding, ding, ding. We are very well aware of what trauma informed care is. But I think it's important to lay that foundation of understanding before we dive into the five P's. Then we'll talk about the five P's. And then finally, I'll pass the baton back over to Mentor National. And I guess we'll make it do what it do and move forward. So that's what you can expect today. All right, so let's start with trauma informed care. So, a little bit about me. I know that Jake shared about what I currently do in my role. I also have my own consulting company called, it's very innovative, you all, Marissa Hitab LLC. And so I've been able to actively engage with nonprofits, for profits, government entities, small businesses, large businesses. I've been able to meet with and work with many different companies. And I'm very grateful now to be in a full-time role with a nonprofit in Omaha called Heartland Family Service. And our organization focuses on providing holistic support for those who are survivors, that are in recovery, and those who may be experiencing homelessness. And so the core foundation of the culture that I cultivate here, that I'm responsible for, is trauma informed care. Those are what our values are deeply in alignment with. And so these are what the core values of trauma informed care are. Except for here, we took hope, which hope is very important. We took out hope and we infused equity into it. And I know that those on this call are also well aware of why equity is so important. And so I thought it would be really important to bring this context into the conversation because here's the truth. And we're going to be confronting some hard truths because in order for us to navigate and move and engage in community well that leads to partnerships, we have to be willing to see ourselves clearly, see our communities from a, of course, strength-based perspective, and also identify some of the things that have gotten in the way. And so here is the truth that we know about the nonprofit industry, period, not just in where I am, Omaha, Nebraska, but across our country and across the world, most likely. But I know the statistics here. And statistically, when we look at nonprofits from a historical context all the way till now, a lot of times nonprofits are set up to support those who have many marginalized different identities, identities that are not in the minority, or folks who, for different reasons, are in a position of disadvantage. And with that, we also know that historically, there has been, and we as a movement, and I'm talking about mentoring movement, we have worked very intentionally in the last 10 years that I can speak to, that I've been proximate to really combat saviorism. And so when we look at our history and what is in the water and what is the truth of how folks have engaged in community with marginalized identities, there has been saviorism, and then there has been things that have been done with good intentions but have caused harm. And that is why I believe being trauma informed is very important, because some of the ways that we're re-engaging requires repair. Most of the ways that we are engaging require trust. And so if we are not aware of the historical context of what we're walking into, that's nationally, but then also very specific to your communities, and we don't bring that lens into the forefront, then the ways in which we may be engaging in partnerships will remain surface. And we don't want surface impact, right? We don't want surface reach. We want things that lead to transformation. We want things that lead to healing. We want things that lead to our young people being supported best. But if we ignore what's in the water, if we ignore the context of what we're breathing in, if we think about Dr. Tori and critical mentoring, if we ignore those things and we don't lay a foundation of understanding how trauma has historically gotten in the way of partnership development and how it's impacted, how relationships haven't been able to be formed in the right way with the right motives, then I believe that how we move forward would remain surface. And we want to go deep. And that's why this visual even has these trauma informed values being in the roots, right? That's important. So, safety, when we're talking about safety, we're talking about holistically. All of these things are holistic. We're not just talking about physical safety. We're talking about psychological safety. We're talking about emotional and mental safety. What are we doing as an organization to hold space for that and to honor and cultivate strong relationships with that in mind? Trustworthiness. I don't know about y'all, but for me, I typically start from a position of trust. And so I start there. But then, baby, once the trust is broken, it's hard for me to move past it. It's hard for me to unsee or unexperience some of the things that have led to trust breakdowns. But let's be real, a lot of folks in our community, a lot of young people, they are not postured like that. They are postured with skepticism and caution, and I don't know. So if we're not going in with showing behaviors that demonstrate trustworthiness, not in just what we say, but in how we show up, what we practice, and what we do, again, it's going to be very hard to build those relationships. Without trust, there's no influence. And without influence, what are we doing? There's no transformation. All right, choice. This is huge for our movement, right? A lot of our affiliates, and I can speak to even Mentor Nebraska's team because I'm most proximate there. And also, I know Mentor California and other affiliates have done a lot of work with normalizing and infusing that voice and choice into how they show up. I even know Mentor California, Mentor Nebraska, they've developed a youth advisory board. I know that Mentor California has, I believe, and Marcus can tell me if I'm wrong, 2 seats on their executive board for young people. So that voice and choice is so important. Collaboration. Of course, we know that this is powerful when it comes to building partnerships, but how we engage in collaboration is important. So if we are postured, again, to the heart posture of this work, if we are postured with being the solution rather than shared ownership and shared partnership and shared purpose, good intention, but can cause harm because we're coming in with solutions, but we have not listened, we have not studied, we have not built that relationship to even see clearly of what are the things that even need to be repaired. And is it our job to repair? Maybe it's not, right? But if we don't go in with the right spirit and the right heart posture for collaborating, then it'll remain at a surface level. It'll be performative. All right, empowerment. That goes hand in hand, I believe, with choice, but empowerment, and that goes with our perspective. We're going to talk about that later, about our perspective and what lens we're bringing as we're engaging with our partners. And then finally, equity. How are we working to remove barriers that prevent equal access to success for them? Some of you are postured to be kind of pass through funders. How are we showing up? How are we collaborating? How are we seeing things that directly impact creating doors of opportunity for our partners where it's not just transactional, but it's really relational, where we are working together side by side, true partnerships to ensure that young people are being best supported. So I felt laying the foundation of trauma informed care, of course, makes so much sense when we're talking about building relationships. And I believe the one that is super, super, super critical, all of them are important, but the one that we're really going to spend a lot of time discussing today is connected to trustworthiness. Because, like I shared, for us to really be able to move and building partnerships beyond the surface, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything more frustrating, like for me, honestly. I'm going to share with you a little bit about how Marissa is wired, right? Um, Anyone who knows me, any of my friends, any of my colleagues, people who I work with, they understand that something that I intentionally lean into, and I've had to learn boundaries, thank God for therapy. Something I lean into a lot is vulnerability. I like to lead from a place of intentional vulnerability. There's boundaries in that, like I shared, but vulnerability and authenticity go hand in hand with the way I'm made up. So for me to be authentic, I have to be truthful. For me to be truthful about where I'm at, what I'm processing, requires a level of courageous vulnerability. But if trust is not there, um, it's hard for me to open up, of course. But what I've learned in leading from a place of vulnerability is it does open the door for trust. And from leading from a place of trust, of vulnerability as well, it also helps me to be human. It helps me to be flawed. And it helps me to be able to go beyond the surface. And we want to go beyond the surface. We don't just want performative partnerships, right? We don't want just transactional ones. And um, a lot of the people we're wanting to partner with, especially if there hasn't been that proximity and that trust, um, they can smell authenticity. They can smell trustworthiness or untrustworthiness from a mile away based on how we're engaging. So, again, at the root of this entire conversation, of course, trauma informed care. But the one that I really, really, really want you to hold into the in the forefront of your heart in this conversation today is trustworthiness. How do we preserve trust? Because without trust, it is impossible to cultivate relationships. And without trust, partnerships will not exist. All right. So we're going to engage with a poll. So here is what I want you to answer. When your organization shows up in the community, so I want you to reflect. What is most likely felt first by the organization or individual you're wanting to engage with? Okay. Is it trust? Do they meet you with wide open arms? Is it curiosity? Is it hesitation? Is it skepticism? Or are you unsure? So I'll give you a moment to kind of reflect on that.
Folks should be seeing the poll pop up on their screens. If you don't see it for some reason, feel free to drop your answer in the chat as well. We have about 60% participation, so let's give it another like 15 seconds or so to let people get their answers in.
All right. How are you feeling, Jake, about
Feeling good. I'll
ending the
end the
poll for
poll
me?
and then share the results so folks should be able to see them. There you go.
All right. So a lot of you have shared that when you're engaging with organizations that you're met with trust and met with the largest one is curiosity. So that's good that a lot aren't met with hesitation and skepticism. Skepticism. That's good. Um, so thank you for participating, and we're going to keep moving forward because I want us to really, really look at that. I'm excited to learn from you all too. I know that you're not going to be able to kind of communicate directly, but in different ways we're going to engage, I'm going to be able to learn you. Okay, so this is the thing that is a little bit, well, no, it's not surprising what you shared because I genuinely believe that in our mentoring movement, we are some of the best people in the world. I love my mentor family, and I know I don't know some of you I do, but some of you I don't. But guess what? I know that we link. Our hearts are linked because we show up in this work and we love this work. And one of the things that we didn't share is I used to work for Mentor Nebraska. I was a part of their team for 3.5 years. I've done work at, of course, the local level, but also the national level. I was a part of a critical mentoring cohort with Dr. Tori Wiesen Serdan, and so there's a group of us that did that work. There was a group of us who did a racial equity committee. So I've been able to really meet people. I've been a part of Capitol Hill Day and when we have our National Mentoring Month in January. And so I know that we are some of the best people in the world. So I just want to say we have linked hearts here, and there's a lot of things that draw us together. So I'm not surprised that if you all are in the forefront of your community involvement, that you would be met with curiosity and trust. I still think that there's ways that we can deepen it because if we were showing up in all the best ways, we would not be leaning in and struggling to recruit mentors. So two truths can exist at one time where, okay, yes, some trust us and some are curious, but also I would be a little bit naive to believe that there's not some skepticism and there's not some reservation and caution with some of our partners, especially if we dissect it and look at who are we not partnering with, especially if we look at it and think, okay, who have we been actively trying to build a relationship with, but baby, they're not opening the door. If we look at that lens, I'm sure there's areas we can improve. And in that way, and with that in mind, what I have seen, whether it's in the mentoring profession or just nonprofits in general, oftentimes organizations, especially for profit, let me say that, oftentimes organizations rarely engage their community without asking for something first. And if that's the truth of what I've seen, and I'm sure you all can probably witness this, and it may not be your organization, maybe it is, it may be someone else's. I'm sure you could see how that would feel a little icky if the first thing we're doing is asking for something. Whether we say it that directly or if we say it around the bush or around a way or, kind of passive away. If that's what's felt, even if we think of it outside of the work, even if relationally with someone else, if you're just coming to ask for something rather than, do you know me? Do you see me? It can feel really icky. It can feel very transactional from the beginning. So, again, a lot of this conversation is going to be around the posture that we take, our heart posture, our motives. Yes, I'm going to be talking about the practical things, but also we're going to be talking about the internal things, internal individually and internal in our organizations. All right. So here are our 5 P's that we're going to be talking about. Again, I'm going to kind of share about some of the things that I've seen, in these past 10 plus years that I've engaged in the mentoring movement. Some of the things that I feel get in the way. How do we do a shift from the things that may exist that are getting in the way? How do we shift? And then finally, how do we practice and demonstrate this P well so that we can strengthen partnerships? So that's what our framework would be for all 5. So the first is around perspective, how you see, understand, and honor community. The second, people, how we engage, how do we reflect, how do we elevate people? Purpose, how we co-create and share with shared purpose. Passion, how we center truth, amplify voices, and tell stories. And then finally, our presence, how we show up consistently to preserve those partnerships. All right, Let's talk about our perspective. So I want you to see this picture, okay? Now, this picture might not be new to some of you, and it may be new to others. But in the chat, can you share with me what was the first thing you saw in this picture? What's the first image you see? And you got to be a little bit more descriptive than just a lady. Okay, a young lady, an old lady, lady in a hat, someone's face, a lady with big hair, a lady with a hat looking to the side, a lady with a feather in her hat, woman with a feather, a young lady, a young woman's face turned to the side. Some turned away, young lady, side view of the lady in 1930s. Ooh, okay, description. When you said the 1930s, it made me want to do the Charleston. Do you all remember the Charleston dance? Do, 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 do. Anyhow, I told you. I got a little razzle dazzle in here. Young lady with a hat who is sad. Okay, so we have folks that are seeing different things. A lot of you are seeing the young lady. I think I saw someone say they saw a woman with a hat on. Someone said they see a sheep. That's interesting. I've never seen a sheep. A lady looking, an older woman. Okay, so I'm going to try to describe this picture actually is two different pictures, and perhaps maybe there's a sheep, y'all. I've never had anyone see a sheep, but hey, we all see different things. So now you got me wanting to look to see where this daggone sheep is. Okay, so some of you are like, oh, now I see an older woman. So okay, I don't know if you can see my kind of like what is this thing called? Mouse, but I'm gonna try to.
We can see it. Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
can.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Jake. So I'm going to try to show you um, the different images. Okay, so for those of you who didn't see the young lady initially, this right here is her jawline, right? So here's her jawline. This down here is her neck, and she's wearing kind of like a big furry coat, and this is like a necklace right here. Then as you go up, this is her hair, this is her ear, this is her nose and eyelashes. And then this is her hair with a feather and maybe a scarf. So that is kind of the image of the young woman looking over her, what is that, left shoulder? So some of you may have seen that image. Some of you saw an older woman. Again, sheep. I'm not gonna be able to describe a sheep. I'm looking for that sheep now. But I'm gonna describe the young lady, the older woman now, okay? So older woman. Down here is her chin. This is a chin and this is her mouth. This is a nose. This is her nose. This is an eye and this is an eye. And this is the hair again with a feather. So again, in one way, it's a woman looking to her left, over her left shoulder, very similar to me. And then another is an older woman who's looking down, her chin down here, not smiling, frowning, and then she has somewhat of a large nose. So let me go back here and see, do you all see those two different images now? Wow, I still can't see the older lady. Okay, that's okay. I see the older woman too with the long, yep, chin and nose. Yes, now I do. Yes. All right, yes, 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 yes. I don't see the old lady. Okay, that's okay. All right, we still have some people are like, Marissa, I know you done told me this is the older woman looking down, but I still only see it. Okay, some people are seeing the old woman now. Yes. All right. I'm going to leave it just maybe a couple more seconds before I move forward, just to see if you can see it. Again, the second of the older woman, she's looking down, frowning. She has a large nose, two eyes, and she's kind of looking. She's kind of looking like when I was growing up, my grandma would look like that a little bit. And she'd be like, I don't know who you think you're talking to, young woman. Get it together. So I don't know if bringing the emotion helps you see her, but my grandma, she would look at me like that. Now listen, get it together. Okay. So I think it's so important to kind of I love this activity. I've done it with different people, but what we see at first glance on the outside can be very different than what we see when we're more proximate. It can be very different than having different perspectives around the table where they see things from a different layer. And it's so interesting that some of you only saw one thing at first, but then just after more intention, a little bit more time, a little bit more context, right? When I started describing the context, your perspective shifted. And then some of you, I can't unsee what I see. Even with you describing it, I still see what I see. So then there has to be a little bit of trust to be like, okay, well, if Marissa's saying there's two, even if I can't see it, maybe I can trust Marissa a little bit to lean into what she has to say, even if I don't see it. Both can exist, right? So, sorry, I got distracted. I was still reading some of the chats. So, here are some of the things I want to talk about what gets in the way at times of our perspective, right? Just like the activity we just did. Um, I think assumptions over really leaning in with understanding can get in the way. And here's the thing though. Here's the thing when we think about brain science, right? Our brains are constantly attaching meaning to someone, to something, to a situation. It's instinctual, it's the way we're wired. And so there is no one in this world that does not lead sometimes with assumptions. No one. It's kind of how our brain, like I'm thinking of the ladder of inference and how we move up the ladder of inference and how we assign meaning and interpret things and how do we disrupt the ladder of inference to then shift our perspective about things. And even me, I'll put myself randomly, Jake, I'm about to put myself on display, right? Right now, you all have been engaging with me for roughly about 20 minutes so far. Jake started, introduced us. We're already 30 minutes into our training. And you all have been assigning meaning to me. You've been observing things, even though I'm on a screen, about why maybe I should be a trusted trainer or not. Okay. So I'm going to put you, and I'm not easily offended. Okay. Let me take off the glasses so you can see my face fully because I'm about to ask you some questions that have to do with me. Just to show you that there's assumptions that our brain just makes all the time. So, right now, if you were to guess, looking at my small little face because mostly what you see is my my slides. If you were to guess how old do you think I am? How old do you think I am? Some of you are like, this is impossible. We don't want to offend you. Okay. 39, 36, younger 30s, 34, 34, 37, 42, 37, 38, 38, 32, younger 30s, late 30s, 35. Awesome. 42, 44, 43, 45. I do have a birthday coming up, by the way. May 3rd, Taurus's in the room. Okay, cool. So these numbers seem really random, right? Some of you think I'm in my early 30s. I'm low-key offended. I know I said I wasn't going to get offended. Low-key offended, nobody said late 20s, Jake. I'm just saying, why did no one say late 20s? I probably could tell you why some of you haven't said late 20s. It's not because I don't look so youthful. It's probably because I told you I have been working with Mentor Nebraska and in this mentoring field for over 10 years, right? Like some of you were gaining and gathering input based on how I look. I do have some bags under my eyes. Typically, folks in their 20s don't. And some of the things that I've shared, right? I saw a 29 guess. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, somebody, whoever put 29, you are my friend. I'm just saying. Um, and thank you for the happy birthday shout out. But I say all that to say we are all gathering input. Okay, let me ask you this other question. Okay, if you were to guess what my ethnicity or race is, what would you think? And then we're going to move forward. Thank you for the happy birthdays. Oh, I didn't tell you how old I am. I'm 36. I'll be 37 May 3rd. Okay, we've got some biracials. Okay, mixed, black, biracial, happy birthday, Afro Latina, biracial. Biracial is really safe because it's like you have an ambiguous look. We think you're mixed with something, right? Native American or Latina. I didn't catch the question. I just asked if you were to guess what you thought my ethnicity or race was, what would it be? So, so yeah. I'll tell you what I am. Yes, I am Black. Both of my parents are African American. I am fair skinned. If you go further back in my history, I'm sure there's all different types of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, but both of my parents are African American. So So again, our brains, back to the assumptions that sometimes we lead with, just based on how our brains and brain science and how we're wired, our brains are constantly gathering information and assigning meaning to it. It's how we're wired. It's not because, we're bad guys, especially when we're bringing up bias and the things that can get in the way of the way, like how we engage. It's just a matter of fact. Our brains are taking in so many things at any given time, and it impacts how we assign meaning. It impacts the decisions we make. It impacts how we communicate, or if we don't, how we engage in conflict and what we see and what we understand. And that's why, well, see, it's so instinctual for me to want to go into how we shift, but our assumptions can get in the way of understanding. I think as a movement, we've worked really, really hard in this area. But for some time, our organizations, and holistically, when we look at the nonprofit sector, especially when we're trying to motivate funders, we would communicate from a place of deficit rather than strength. And that kind of goes hand in hand also when you have folks that are not of the communities wanting to come in to help solve and support, because again, limited context, limited perspective, seeing a need, right? But with a perspective that's based in lack rather than abundance and strength can get in the way of our perspective and how we build trust. Because who really wants to be engaged, being felt, and treated like a project, like someone or something that needs to be fixed? And don't get me wrong, repair, healing, restoration, all those things are important. But who wants to be engaged in such a way? That's in the water, y'all. That's in the roots of nonprofits, not just mentoring nonprofits. That's there. So, again, if we're not aware of what the experience is and what people may feel like in our presence, surface rather than deep. And we want to form deep partnerships. Internal voices over lived experience. So again, I want to bring up where I work because where I work currently, I've never seen lived experience honored the way it is. And it's not honored just in words, it's honored in policy, it's honored in the roles that we hire, it's honored in when I'm in the room and we're asking for input, who we listen and lean into. But a lot of times, lived experience can be swatted away because we like data, we like evidence, we like proof, we like theory, we like philosophizing. And sometimes we have a hard time sitting in truth. Sometimes we have a hard time listening if the words are not elegant. Sometimes we have a hard time listening or even reading if there's grammatical errors. Do we have the ability to look through it and still hear and see the heart of things? Who do we lean into, listen to, and who do our hearts and our minds see as experts? If we don't learn how to elevate, not just in words, but in our hearts, and then create space through that equity lens for lived experience to take its rightful place, how are we really going to build trust? And how are we really going to get to the root of what's getting in the way? I believe lived experience is one of the things we really, really need to elevate more and listen and believe. And then visibility mistaken for trust. Baby, some of our organizations, we do have a recruitment strategy. We are at all the carnivals, the festivals, the expos, the fairs. We are there, but is it enough to be there? How are we there? Who is there? Who's here in our organizations that are helping us identify where we should be, right? Visibility and trust are not hand in hand. To be seen but not experienced, to be seen and not felt, to be seen and not listened to, is it enough just to be visible? I would say no. So here are the things that I believe get in the way of trust when it comes to perspective. All right. So how do we shift those things? I believe by checking our bias, being aware of our blind spots, and not putting on rose-colored glasses and thinking that just everything we're doing is perfect. Again, I told you, remember earlier I sang when we opened up and while I was sitting here, I don't know if you all know about a group called Outkast, but I was thinking of a song that said, Roses really smell like boo. But that whole song is about that. Like, we don't want our roses. We think that we're out here and our roses are lovely, but baby, to the community, it smells like boo, ooh, ooh, ooh. No, honey. I know you like to think you're don't stink, but lean a little closer because roses really smell like boo, ooh, ooh, ooh. We don't want that, okay? We want our roses to be fresh. We want to be able to come in and what we believe our community is experiencing is actually what they're experiencing. Again, if we lean into who we see as experts and posture ourselves as being learners and with humility, that's so important. That humility, especially around engaging with different cultures, really important. I want to take a moment, Jake. Are you all hearing me okay? Because on my end, it's a little spotty. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. I don't, there wasn't any spottiness for me. It looks like we're getting thumbs ups and stuff in the chat.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay. Did you all, so you all did get to experience my song with Outkast. I'm sure you love
We did.
that.
Good throwback. I love it.
I might throw a little hot to go in there, Jake. I haven't forgotten about that, okay? It's still a jam in my house, okay? So, so yes. So who we're listening to and who we're respecting and who we're creating doors of opportunity to not just hear them but listen to them is so important to all. That humility piece and curiosity is so important. Even if we're met with hesitation, like we did with our poll, if we're met with hesitation and we meet them with curiosity from a great heart posture, that can be a game changer, you all. Like, I'm interested in learning. I'm only asking because I want to know you more. Like, we know relationally, like person to person, oh, that can be transformative. But it also can show up in the same way when we're engaging with organizations. Again, this I believe we do very well as a movement. We have done intentional work throughout these years to move from deficits to strength based narratives. And I believe that's because we've been intentional about who also we're drawing to our organization. So I believe that as a mentoring movement, we do a really good job currently about not centering deficits and when we're talking about our young people and centering deficits and when we're wanting to engage with community. And then talking versus listening. Mm-mm-mm. If we would have been in the room, one of the agreements we would have started with is one diva, one mic. That's because some of us are, we love to run our giblets, as I call it. I'm someone that loves to run my giblets. I love to talk. But some of us are not aware of how much space we take up, how much talking we're doing versus really listening. And are we listening to understand or are we listening to solve? Again, heart posture. So here are some practical things that you can do after today's session that can really help you do some intentional, deliberate perspective shifting, right? Things that you can practice and things that you can infuse. And some of you may be doing these things already to normalize perspective shifting and perspective sitting. How do we just sit and witness and observe and learn? How many of you have done hosted listening sessions with no agenda? I'm just here to listen. How many of you have done an audit of your messaging and imagery? But here's the thing, a lot of us may audit it and like look through and observe it and see like, okay, where's diversity living and breathing? What words are we using? But what would be really powerful is who you're engaging to give you the perspective. Like, have you engaged with any young people and said, hey, if you go to our website, like, well, who do you think our website's for? Or if you go on our website, who would you think our mentees are? Like, who are we here to help? How does it make you feel? Like, how are you engaging with the auditing process and who are you engaging with? Because a lot of times it's adult centered, and a lot of times our content is for just sometimes funders and only mentors. But it's important to also be aware of who it is we're wanting to support and how they feel they're being valued. I remember a couple years ago, I did a Black Youth Town Hall, and I will never forget the young people there. It was powerful, but they challenged the heck out of us at that time. And they said, we do not just want to be a photo op. We're tired of just being in the photos, but we're not felt anywhere else. We don't have a voice anywhere else. And we as adults had to just sit back in that, like, wow, just a photo op. So, yeah, who you're engaging with is important. And then how you're engaging with trusted community voices. Who are the people that people already trust, right? If that's the foundation of everything is trust and influence, who are you engaging with in the community that has trust? And how are you listening to them? And then a question that we should always be asking, whose voice is missing? Whose voice is missing? When we think of, and a good foundation is to look at the demographical data of your entire county or city or wherever you are, your region. Look at that data and then pull the data. And if you don't have a mechanism to pull the data in your organization now to really see who's being drawn to your organization, both employee and mentor, we're talking internal and external, that's a good starting point. Are we good, Jake? You just popped up.
Yep, we just have a couple questions whenever you're done with the slide that I think would be good to answer.
Yeah, go ahead, because this is my last slide before we move into our second P.
Awesome. So I'll start with this one because it's directly referencing something on the slide. Someone is asking when you hold or when you say to hold listening sessions without an agenda, does quote, how can we improve our program still count as an agenda?
I think that can be a purpose on what you're wanting to listen for. But I think to create space to see what other themes and things come out is important. So I don't think it's bad to like have some intention that you're wanting to gather, right? But sometimes we'll go into hosting listening sessions with an outcome or an end in mind. So our questions are geared towards getting to that outcome rather than really listening to understand. We're listening to solve, we're listening to get to this particular outcome. That, if that's the driving force, then you still are trying to control the narrative. You're still trying to control the story. So I don't think it's wrong to have some questions or something that you're wanting to look at and investigate, but there needs to be space for, I guess you could say, a different pathway. There needs to be a space for you to discover and maybe learn things that you hadn't considered, and then apply that information to maybe how you're showing up when it comes to your program lens. So hopefully that's helpful.
Right. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
Is
Yeah,
there
being
another
okay with
question,
the
Jake?
tangents and not trying to redirect everything to a specific purpose. Yeah, the other question came
Right.
a few minutes ago, and it was when you were talking about trying to avoid that first outreach, being like asking someone for something. This person is wondering, what are some of the ways organizations are asking things from their partners? Is it time, commitment, etc.? And this person is curious if some organizations don't even realize that they are asking for something first.
Hmm. Well, I believe when it comes to that question, we all hold the expertise in that. Honestly, I can definitely lay out tons of examples. I know we could too. So I want to open it up. Actually, I want to open it up to all of us because we were all experts in our own way. What do you all think? What do you think are different asks that your organization has done when engaging with communities? And this is not from a place of shame. This is just a place of awareness. I'm curious. And maybe not you, maybe some other organization you've seen, right? I don't know. I'm just curious. I feel like we all could answer this question together. Time, for sure. Extra communication, referrals. Okay, can I rephrase the question? So the initial question, and that's great. I'm glad you asked that, was what are different ways in which organizations are asking? So one of the phrases I said at the very before we did this first P was many organizations engage with partnerships first by asking something, not to just know, not just to get to know someone, not to just be proximate. We typically go towards a partnership because we have an ask, and that can feel transactional. So the question was, what are ways in which people do that? And so some people are saying the ways that they do it, the first ask is time. Some people are saying referrals with commitments immediately, energy to share testimonials. Okay, sometimes we're asking them to trust us immediately. That's what I'm hearing with what some of the things I'm saying. We're asking for them to engage with us in partnership so that we can support them. That's true, Becca. A lot of us do that. And if you think about that really, if that is our initial way of engaging, that's a big ask. We're asking them to trust us without showing and demonstrating we're trustworthy. So if we're going to say we want to support you, we're leading with an assumption of trust first. But we have to cultivate in behavior, action, and follow through that we're trustworthy. So sometimes we're going in there expecting trust from the beginning, and I don't think that's fair to partners, especially if we think about, again, what is in the air, what is in the water, mistrust, and sometimes harm, even if our intentions are well. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to move forward. And if we have time at the end to circle back to some of these, we will. Those were great questions. Thank you, Jake. All right, so you all, so we just talked about our perspective, right? And the things that can get in the way of building trust based on what we see, based on how we engage. The second P is people, right? How we engage, how we reflect and elevate the people who already hold trust in the community. That's what we're going to talk about here. So, what gets in the way? I think it's really important in this P with people. I feel like it's directly connected a lot of times to recruitment. A lot of times when we're thinking of people as nonprofits, it's twofold. And a lot of this conversation is twofold. When we're talking about external people, we talk about who's being drawn to our organizations, who's working for us, who are our representatives. And then when we think about external in the mentoring movement, we're thinking a lot of times of our mentors. How can we recruit more mentors? And how can we support other mentoring organizations who need people? And we know we hear that. Like, we need people, we need mentors, we need people. And so, who is a part of our organization, whether it's full time employees or consultants, like I'm a consultant from Mentor, Nebraska, that is really important in how we're also cultivating, maintaining, and sustaining trust and partnerships. So, I think it's really important that we're deliberate. And I do think a lot of us do this well, and our mentoring organizations we support do this well, but sometimes not. Like, we need to get more people, but I believe we need to get the right people, right? And a lot of people are drawn to our organizations, employee, consultant, mentors, not just for young folks, but a lot of them are motivated for purpose and impact. Like, am I making a difference? No, I'm not trying to center me, but if I'm setting aside my commitments, if I am setting aside my time, my responsibilities, and things I could be doing, is it making a difference? So a lot of times how we engage with people have to be the right fit as well. Is the purpose within them in alignment with the purpose within us? And that is a missed opportunity a lot of time if we're just focusing on recruiting people, but not recruiting purpose. And that's going to be our third purpose. So I'm not trying, I mean, our third P, I'm not trying to uh, get ahead of myself, but they are linked. All these P's are linked, y'all. And then diversity is important. Like, do we have diverse perspective around the tables when we're making decisions? That's why I was so like, I believe Marcus, he's the CEO of Mentor California, when he had shared that he had two seats, not just one, because he didn't just want one token young person. He wanted there to be at least two seats in their executive board for them to have decision. Man, it gave them so fresh perspective. the perspective from the young folks they're wanting to influence with different levels of proximity. So, diversity of age and gender and ethnicity and socioeconomic levels and areas and all of those things help to shape our perspective and help us engage with people from a different way and a different lens. But a lot of times, what gets in the way is we recruit from what's familiar and what's comfortable in our networks. And if we look at those who are being drawn to our organizations internally, meaning our workforce, or the representatives and ambassadors that are representing us from our board members all the way to our employees, if there are different, consistent, shared identities that are very majority, we can assume, going back to perspective and assumptions, that there are blind spots in folks that we're not engaging with. And more importantly, like how we're engaging and not engaging with them that they wouldn't want to come and work with us. Excuse me. And then finally, overlooking informal leaders and trusted voices. Again, I think this is something that we've worked really diligently as a movement, but we can improve. I can speak from Omaha. I'm going to speak from Omaha. Omaha's in here. Hey, y'all. One of the things that Omaha can do as a city, just some part of the city, they can really get caught up in elevating the same voices over and over and over and over and over in so many different places, in so many different spaces, on so many different boards. And there's missed opportunity. I believe that as a city, we need to do a better job at going searching for gold. Like there's so many people that have so much to say and contribute, but if we're only elevating the same leaders in the same organizations and the same board members and we're recycling them from place to place, our perspective is shallow, our perspective is limited. So who we're listening to and who we're seeking after matters, especially with that informal lens. So how do we do the shift? Again, if there's questions that you have as I'm speaking, feel free to drop them in the chat and Jake will elevate them for me. Can you all believe we've already been together almost an hour? What the heck? All right. How do we do the shift around how we're engaging with people to cultivate trust? We've got to move the conversation from attracting to reflecting. I think that's really important. Do we just want to attract people or do we want people to be seen? Can they see us? Can they see them? Do they see themselves in our stories? Do they see themselves in our people that are in our organizations? Do they see and do we see them? So we have to move from just this performative, we want to attract, we want to attract. No, we want to reflect. We want to be a part and of the community. We want our people to be. We don't want to just attract them. That again is connected to a heart posture. And based on where we're postured in our hearts, it impacts the fruit of what comes out. It does. It impacts what we say, how we say it, how we engage. And go back and think about that. Like if our initial contact with a new partner isn't asked, whether it's time, commitment, or expecting them to trust us from the beginning, transactional relationships and transactional relationships are surface. We want to go deep. Gatekeeping versus accessibility. Now, this part, y'all, convenience, intentionality, gatekeeping, accessibility, who can join, who holds trust. We're going to put all these together, okay? Because these are big. And I want to say a hard truth. And this, I've seen leaders do well. And this, I've seen leaders miss the mark. In our mentoring movement, in the nonprofit sector, leaders can really miss the mark here around gatekeeping. And how it shows up is remaining in positions for way too long. We have got to be willing to be reflective and self-aware as organizations, and we've got to be willing to move out of the way. When I go back to that town hall I had a couple of years ago in 2021, it was after 2020. We were still all locked up. It was a virtual town hall. The young people, again, I'm thinking of their quote. They said, "We don't want a seat at your table. We want our own. Y'all get in the way. You don't listen to us." They were talking to adults. I think we can do that as mentoring organizations in the nonprofit. We get in the way. We remain too long. We don't share space and power well. And some of us to demonstrate this is to move, is to open the door for someone else to get in a role. That is demonstrating shared power, relinquishing power at times, positional power to open up doors for other voices. That that's our heart posture is pure there. If we're willing to move out of the way, is it about us? Don't get it twisted. I understand we got bills. We've got a livelihood, right? But what I'm speaking about is when we've been in roles so long, there's not a lot of space for innovation. I don't know if you've all ever heard a word historically, or we've tried that, or we've done that in the, you tried it then, but could we try it again? Maybe we can do it in a different way. Sometimes gatekeeping shows up in staying and remaining too long. And that can be convenient, that can be comfortable, but we've got to be willing to shift and move out of the way, y'all. So here are some of the things that shifting how we engage with people and build trust with people can look like. Again, I want to elevate the last time we talked about those informal leaders. Let's bring this in here. How we partner with trusted community leaders is important, but that requires proximity. How are we really going to see the trusted community partner leaders if we're not proximate? And if we're only going in with an ask and we're only going in when it's convenient for a recruitment affair, fair or something we're doing, we're missing the mark. That's why diversity around the table in our organizations are important because we live and abide in different places. And by us living and abiding in different places, we bring that perspective when we're making decisions about engaging with community. But if we have monolithic cultures and we have people that have majority shared lived experience and identities, then that is why sometimes our relationship building is shallow because we are only having limited external spectating, really, perspective of who community leaders are. So we miss the informal ones. So we've got to get more proximate. We've got to remove barriers to engage that equity piece. So, going back to some of the practical things around the perspective, listening sessions. How do we remove barriers based on what we hear? How are they partners in removing them? How do we pick up those blocks and move them together? Right? Creating pathways together to lead, not just to serve, to lead. How are we co leading? Not that we're just coming in to solve. No, we're leading. That's strength based, right? And then how do we build relationships before the ask? Before we even ask for anything? Those are things you've got to think about. And there's not a one size fits all answer for that because all of the needs of our communities are differently. But if we can at least start foundationally within from these postures and with this intention, then trust based relationship building takes place. And then partnerships are preserved, maintained, and cultivated from that posture, not just from transactional relationship building. So before we move to our third P, are there any questions that have popped up, Jake?
I don't think any that you won't likely answer, so maybe we'll loop back towards at another point.
All right, we're going to keep it moving, y'all. We've got about 25 more minutes, and then I'm going to pass it on to Jake. So I want you all to ask this question. And this is not something we have to put in the chat, but I am going to pause for like a moment. And I hope this is something that you can think about even after our time together today. Who feels most welcomed in your current recruitment approach? Again, I told you this is kind of around recruitment. And recruitment is both internal and external. Who is being drawn to your organization that want to work with you, be a part of your team? And then what mentors are being drawn? Who is welcome into your recruitment approach and who might feel invisible based on who shows up? I hear a lot in my line of work. Well, when we're recruiting, we can't get a diverse applicant pool. Okay, who are we partnered with? Who are we listening to? Who are we engaging with that can share about our mission, our purpose, let alone a job? Who wants to partner with us through volunteering and all the things, right? Like, who might feel welcome based on everyone who shows up, and who might feel invisible based on the ones who don't? And I just want us to sit with that a little bit. And maybe jot something down when you think about that. Who might feel invisible? You may have felt invisible at one point, and that's why you're in this line of work, right? Some of these things might be, this question might bring up things that connected to your why and your purpose and why you show up in this work, which leads me to our third P, purpose. How do we co create shared purpose that builds trust and shared ownership? Probably hear a little bit around that gatekeeping piece in this too, right? Shared ownership, shared power, shared autonomy, shared partnership, shared responsibility, shared accountability, shared, right? This, when it's done well, can relinquish so much pressure. Another P, it can. Like, we feel so much pressure as practitioners in this work to be able to draw the right people. And we always have a need for more, right? Because the need of our communities are so big. But if we get this right, this purpose work well, and we communicate from this way and this place, this relinquishes some of the pressure. Because when we flow from this place and purpose, then we draw purpose to us. And purpose is what sustains and maintains and motivates people. That impact. Am I making a difference? So, what gets in the way of trust when it comes to building purpose and shared responsibility? Tell you all, it's like, okay, Marissa, you're talking more about like the heart stuff. It's so important though. What are we centering? And a lot of times we have centered our goals over community needs, especially because you all know we got bills to pay and funders. It's like the needs of the community are vast, but how do we meet the needs if we're not serving the funders? The funders also have all these needs and requirements. And so that's why this performative dance comes. Our motives can be pure and in the right place. But then when life is lifing and we've got bills to pay and we've got funders to prove why we should be trusted, and we've got funders that we've got to build relationships with, so easy it's so easy to go from people to productive, from people-centered work to producing. And it's a hard balance. It's hard to do this dance of, yes, we need this funds to support our work, but the people matter the most. But we also have all these demands. But I'm telling you, we have got to learn how to center our why, which is our purpose, which is connected to community needs over just the goals. I don't want to make it seem like we can just put those things in the background. They're real. But if one is in front of the other more, it can make things transactional. And we don't want just transactional partnerships. We want purposeful partnerships. How we invite participation without shared power. That's what, when I think of that conversation with the young people, and they were like, we don't just want to be a photo op. We were inviting them to participate, but we didn't give them real voice. We didn't really listen to them for how it can lead to transformation. And even if we did we circle back to tell them your input directly impacted this? What about our partners? We heard you, we listened, we responded. If that's a simple framework, y'all. We heard you, we listened, and then we changed this. We heard you, we listened, we showed up differently. A lot of times we'll hear them, we'll listen, but then we get caught up in the goals versus maintaining the trust and telling them that we actually did something. A lot of us are doing things, but we're not saying it, right? So that's an easy fix. Again, remember I told you what's in the water? And I talked to you about saviorism. Saviorism still comes up in so many ways, especially when we're in an industry full of helpers. Helpers, we, good intended people, can perpetually backburner our needs, which is why we also struggle with fatigue compassion or compassion fatigue and burnout. And because our hearts are really linked, y'all, especially if we have lived experience connected. But sometimes our helping can lead to enablement. And I'm not just talking organizationally, I'm talking people. That's some of the things that link us, is that we can be helpers to our detriment. and we'll want to help from a good place, but we can stunt growth by helping so much. And in true partnership, you all, it's equal responsibility, it's equal accountability, and it's reciprocal. Reciprocation is important. That is a way that we've stunted the growth sometimes of our community, y'all. We've been so interested in saving and so interested in serving that there hasn't been a foundation of equal accountability and responsibility, and we've stunted growth. True partnership is around mutual growth. True partnership is about learning and reciprocating and pouring into each other. But sometimes it's been a one-way street. Good intention, but can cause harm, right? And then assuming alignment without asking how we listen. Have you all heard we listen and we don't judge? Sorry, that just popped in my head. We need to listen and not judge, y'all. We need to listen and respond. And then we need to listen and then share how we responded. And we need to listen for alignment. There's that purpose, right? Do we have shared purpose? Purpose driven people are drawn to purpose driven missions. So if we can do a better job at elevating purpose and our why we exist, and we can pull that out of the people we're wanting to draw, then we will bring the right people, right? And abundance will come in rather than deficit, rather than survival. Abundance will be able to come in because we'll be drawing not just people, but the right people from purpose. And that's where the shift happens. Our mission to shared purpose, inviting to them, then moves into co-creating. We'll go from serving to partnering. Do you see where some of this is where it can relinquish some of the pressure? Because in partnership, we're both dancing. It's not just one person leading. No, there's this dance and it's shared. So it's not all on us. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to do all the lifting. We don't have to do all the pushing and coming up with the pathway forward. It's shared. So partnership relinquishes pressure. It really does when it's done well. It's driven by purpose and alignment. And that there's peace that comes with that. There is an ease that comes with that. But the other things are important so that we can get into that form of alignment. And then we move from control to shared ownership. So hopefully you can see how this relinquishes some of the pressure when it's done well. We want to draw purpose and alignment. And without centering trust through that purpose lens, it'll be hard to do that. All right, Jake, are there any other questions that I need to be aware of before we move to our fourth P?
I think we're good to keep pushing for now.
Okay. I kind of shared a little bit about that. That's why I moved forward. Okay. So passion. How we center truth amplifies voices and tells stories that build trust. So I want to use me again as an example. And I want you all to put, what will I have you share in the chat? We'll see. But I want to first say this. So think about it. When we first started, many of you didn't know who I was, right? This was your first time interacting with Marissa Hitab. You're only going based on a very small little snippet bio to say, is Marissa someone worthy of listening to? But I want to ask you, when I opened up our training and I started with a trauma-informed conversation, and I said, the truth of what we're navigating is this. Did that impact? So I guess just a yes or no. When you reflect on me being a stranger and you leaning in to listen to me a little differently, me opening up by telling the truth about what we all know is true, do you feel like that added? So, yes or no, did that add to my credibility or take away? Yes, it added to your credibility and I wanted to listen. No, it didn't make a difference. I'm curious. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. Yes, 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 yes. Definitely. Definitely. I love that. I'm a mom. I have three kiddos. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I have a 5-year-old son. Y'all, I got high school, elementary, preschool. Drop off next year is going to be lovely. My son will be in kindergarten. I have my daughter turned 16. She's about to get her license next week, y'all. Drop off next year is about to be lovely, but this year, terrible. Three different drop offs every morning. Anyways, I bring up my children because when I think about what it has taken to be able to mother at three different levels, especially with my high schooler, I've had to learn how to be honest about my mistakes and own them so that I can repair and preserve trust with my daughter. Growing up in my generation, there wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of parents owning and saying, I made a mistake. How can I show up and be better? But what I have seen by being truthful about my imperfections and shortcomings and the things I don't always get right is it preserves and deepens intimacy with my children. My child comes and shares things with me that I don't have to dig for because I've normalized transparency and honesty and I right my wrongs. And I think that's really important when I think of passion, how we center truth and amplify voices and tell stories that build trust. Because a lot of times we think that lens is only through this cookie cutter, we haven't made mistakes. But that radical vulnerability and honesty and trust and telling the hard truths at time, even from the beginning when I did that, when I said, y'all, before we can talk about any of the P's, we've got to talk about what's in the water. That gave me legitimacy with you all. That helped build trust. So, how we tell stories, what we tell and we share, and we use stories with them and not about them, that's some of the things that we can miss the mark in. And again, we're doing better as a movement, but for far too long, in a lot of other nonprofits, we center struggle over the strengths. That's again connected to the deficit perspective. A lot of times we have organization centered narratives that can get in the way, like we center ourselves versus them. And that's hard though, because funders want to know, well, what sets you apart where we want to give you money? But there's a delicate balance. There's a dance that we're doing, right? Like even in what we just talked about, like the shared ownership and things like that. So if we're able to center the organization and communicate about how shared ownership and collaboration is what solves it, we'll also be able to draw, which we haven't talked about, the right funders to us. And a lot of times we, like I said, avoid the hard truths to stay comfortable or to stay as an expert, why we should be trusted. But experts make mistakes too, right? So the shift, I'm sorry. The shift is we go from telling a story to telling the truth. And they can be done at the same time, but sometimes, y'all, we only tell the good things and we don't tell the hard things. I think we need to do better at telling the whole truth. I think we need to tell, hey, we tried this one thing, lessons we learned. We didn't have it right, but what we learned was this. So now we're responding, right? That's the truth. That's a full picture of the story. And when our partners who haven't engaged with us hear that, that helps to build trust. Oh, they know they missed the mark, but they responded. Okay, we can work here. Of course, we need to move from saving narratives to empowering narratives. We know that. I don't even have to spend a lot of time there. Speaking for versus amplifying. Again, that takes the pressure off of us. We don't have to be the spokesperson. We open the doors, we remove the barriers for them to share their experiences, right? This is another area I think we do really well as a movement. And baby, we don't have to polish the stories. We can tell honest stories. Because when we tell honest stories, no one can weaponize our imperfections against us because we're telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And if I've already spoken my full truth that yes, I made a mistake, but this is how I responded and repaired it. No one can weaponize anything against us, so we can tell the honest truth, be responsive, and preserve trust. So finally, what are some of the things we can do? How we practice this? We can co-create stories. Some of you are already doing that. You co-create with young people. Use strength-based, culturally affirming language. But again, that requires proximity to community leaders, and formal and formal. Shared impact with community voices included. I think we do good as well. I know I keep saying we. I'm a part of this, and I do. There's hey, I'm gonna say the good things we do too. Yes, we're growing to learn, but some of these things I need to affirm in you because you all are doing amazing things already. So how we share impact with community voices included. As a movement, we do good at this. We'll share our platforms to share about what our partners are doing. So I want to keep saying, keep doing that. You all are doing it, keep doing it. And then whose story is this and who is telling it is a question we can ask ourselves to keep us rooted in this. Whose story is this and who is telling it? Because we don't want to just tell it, we want them to tell it, and we open the door for them. And then finally, presence. I'm going to land here. So, a little bit of a shameless plug with me. I shared with you all that I have my own consulting. It's very innovative, Marissa Hataba LC. But last year, I wrote a book, and the book was called With You in Mind. And it's a 10-day leadership reset to help busy leaders who struggle with burnout and backburnering their needs, the helpers. It teaches us to bring ourselves to the forefront of ourselves and practice what I call presence driven practices. How do we be a presence driven leader? How do we remain present? How do we remain in the moment? How do we not live in the past? How don't we live so deeply in the future that we miss this moment? Presence. How do we show up consistently to sustain trust in those relationships? Because I'm telling you, the way I was showing up was not sustainable. I would live in perpetual states of burnout. And yes, I'm talking about me at an individual level, but we do this as an organization. And what happens when we're not present is we go into survival mode. And we know that from brain science, when we go into survival mode, it strips us of creativity. It strips us of innovation. We think very narrow because we're just trying to survive versus thrive. And when trust is in relationships, there's space for, again, I'm going to keep saying it, abundance. The opposite of abundance, I believe, is survival, lack. So I've talked a lot about transactional relationship building, and we want to move into transformative relationship, trust centered relationship building for partners. But I think performance gets in the way of presence. Performance gets in the way of intimacy. And intimacy is beyond the surface relationships, right? I say intimacy is into me see. Do you see into me? And do you still love me in it? Do you see into me and still draw close to me? Do you see into me and still want to be in relationship with me, the good, bad, and the ugly? That's true partnership. And yes, that is added. I'm talking from like a person to person, but also when we're wanting to work to repair and heal, which was the foundation of this conversation when we talked about trauma informed care, without that level of connection and proximity, how can we remove or how can we move from performance into repair? And there needs to be repair, there needs to be healing, right? And so intimacy is a part of that. So, what gets in the way of our presence and how we show up and how we're present, right? Showing up only when we need something. And when I bring these up, I'm sure you all can sit here and you're probably thinking of some relationships that have felt a little icky, where someone only calls when they need something, when people prioritize outreach over being in relationship. Again, y'all, this work is heart posture. How about when someone shows up inconsistently with you? Do we show up like that as an organization with our partners? Are we inconsistent? Do we follow through? Do we show up when it's hard, when it's inconvenient? Do we show up just because and not because we're getting something from it? Right? Again, seeing partnership as transactional. What do I get? I get, you get. That surface, we want to go deeper, right? And then the shift. How do we move from transactional and performance into real connection? Relationship. We're not just asking. We care about you. We're genuine. We care about you. We're not inconsistent. We show up consistently, and when we're there, we're actively engaged. We go from an agenda driven to people centered. Remember, even at the beginning, we talked about, do we have agenda free listening sessions? That requires relinquishing control, which we've also talked about. And then from extracting to investing. I'm here because I care. Investing doesn't just have to be money, it can be presence. We're here. We're in it with you. We're building with you. I don't want anything. I know we have an event next week, but even if you can't come, I'm here because my intention is in the right place. I'm not here just because I expect you to show up next week for my event. I'm here because I care. We get this, you all, at an individual level because we've been on the receiving end of someone not being genuine about us. We can apply the same thing to how we show up in our communities, you all. It's simple, but it's powerful. So here are some of the things you can practice. Attend some community spaces without an agenda, just be there. Don't even have to talk. Sometimes being there's enough, right? Follow through consistently and communicate openly. Remember how I told you a lot of times we'll listen, we'll respond, but then we don't circle back and share about how we did? Simple fix. How are we telling the story honestly and holistically, right? How do we support partner initiatives? Not just our own, that's felt. And then how do we need to practice humble proximity to be present and not just positioned. That's again connected to our motives, but our motives are felt. So I want to open it up for any questions. And I'm just going to have these key takeaways on the screen. I don't have to read these. We've already talked about these. So now I'd like to open it up for a question or two, and then I'll pass it to you, Jake.
Yeah, so I think if you want to answer this, and I'm also curious about what people out there are doing for this. So if you could, if the audience can drop their answers in the chat to this, this person is just wondering general resources to find partners. How are people sourcing partnerships? But yeah, Marissa, from your perspective, what are some starting points that they can start at?
Yeah, so I would say this. I think it would be a really, and I'm trying to be concise for the sake of time. So I think a really good first step is to look at who's being drawn to your organizations. That's internally, meaning your employees and consultants, and also mentors, depending on how your role is positioned. Some of us might be backbone organizations supporting other mentoring organizations, and some of us are from mentoring organizations. So whatever your need is, you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, who's here? And if we look at the demographical context of our community, who's not? And then based on who is not, pull out one or two of those groups of people and start there. And groups of people, I'm talking about different identities. So the identity could be 20 to 30-year olds, right? Like that could be an identity where you're like, all of our mentors are in their 50s. So you look at that area, and based on that need where they may be invisible and that's why they're not showing up, well, then you start actively engaging with some community members to listen and understand what's driving their purpose, right? One of our P's. Why? What do they look to engage in? Where are they at? Where do they hang out? And so I know that's not like I could go on and on about all the next steps, but that's a good starting point. Is just identify who may feel invisible in your recruiting approach and start there and then start actively engaging and becoming more proximate to whatever that group is. And then you can come up with a strategy about how you can engage with them that then can lead to partnerships. And
Awesome,
then I think
thank you.
other folks may be putting the answers in. And
Yeah,
then,
we
yes, these are being recorded, right? Okay.
Yep. We'll send that out. And I know there were a couple more questions, but for the sake of time, I'll take those questions and I'll gather some information from Marissa and from some other folks, and we'll post that along with the slides, the answers to those.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for your time. I hope that this training was helpful. Again, I think it's important that we all have a time and an opportunity to look within, and how we posture our hearts directly impacts what flows out of it. So if we're not aware of how we're showing up and why we're showing up, then the outcomes are going to be transactional versus transformational. And that's what we want. So thank you for your time. And Jake, the floor is yours. And let me know when you need me to move forward.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, th I see all the hearts and the emojis and thank yous in the chat. So thank you so much, Marissa. This was such an incredible webinar. So many practical steps that people can take, but then also I love the grounding that you really focused in on to prepare folks and get them in the right mindset beforehand. We can move on to the next slide for additional resources. So if you haven't already noticed, the National Mentoring Summit Workshop RFP is open. That's our annual conference that happens in DC every year. You can go to mentoring.org/summit to learn more about submitting a workshop application. Affiliates. So, as Marissa stated, and we have Melissa Westbrook and Elisa Moore here from Mentor Nebraska, we have affiliates all over the country. Get in contact with them for training, resources, help with public awareness and advocacy. Again, shout out to Mentor Nebraska for making this happen. We also have the Mentoring Connector where you could submit your mentoring program for visibility across the nation for folks who are looking to become mentors. They can find your program there. And then you'll get the slides, so you'll be able to click that link. But check out our resource or our website for all sorts of publication resources, templates, and blogs. Can move on to the next slide. So take just 2 to 3 minutes to do our anonymous survey. It'll pop up on your screen once we close out the webinar. Lets us know how we did, lets us know what you want to see in the future. And then again, in a week, you'll receive the recording, slides, resources, and an email as well as on the website. Then one more slide as we close out. We'll see you next month. So on May 21st, as I said, we have the Governor's Prevention Partnership leading part two of this series, from connection to collaboration, strengthening partnerships and mentoring programs. So it'll just continue this conversation so that we get really in the weeds and in depth on this topic of building community partnerships. But again, thank you so much, Marissa. We really appreciate you. This was such an amazing webinar, so much fun, so much engagement. Thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Yes, we're so proud of you. And
Thank
Marissa is on
you.
socials. I saw that question in the chat. She is on socials.
We'll make sure to link with the slides, like her link
Yes,
there
she's
as
got
well.
all the ways to get to her. Highly recommend.
All right, take care,
Yeah, I
everybody.
can share that, I guess.
Thank you. We'll see
See
you
you,
on the next
everyone.
one.
Bye.